Yes, my dark squires, you are shaping up nicely. You are brain-dead and irresponsible. My perfect minions for overthrowing Mr. Bolstead. Eventually, Camelot and Brookings will be under my control. The perfect dictatorship. Ha ha. What's that you say? You think you can stop me? Don't be foolish. You won't master all the standards. Fifth graders these days have no grit. Besides, my plan is too far in motion to be stopped, and there hasn't been any Knights of Social Studies recruited in years.
Why, hello, and welcome to Social Studies in a Snap. I'm Mr. Brainstead, back to your time period again with the power of my handy-dandy time travel lanyard. And I'm back once again to help you progress with your standards of social studies so you can become knighted by the end of this year. And you are all so very close with just a handful of standards left for the rest of the year. To find out more about how our country expanded and explored the West, let's go back in time to visit with the guy on the $20 bill, War of 1812 hero and President Andrew Jackson. Hello, Mr. President. Could you please explain for our future Knights of Social Studies the role that you played in expanding the territory that is the United States?
By my encouragement, the U.S. government passed a law in 1830 called the Indian Removal Act. This allowed the U.S. government the right to force Native American Indian tribes to vacate their land and move to reservation lands, which are geographic areas the government had put aside for their use. Now, most Indian tribes did not want to leave their land. It was their spiritual and physical home. But the government sent in the army to force tribes to move, mostly because the land that they had was better land. And these savages, they didn't even use it for farming. The Cherokee, like other tribes and nations, were told to leave. The U.S. government gave them land in Oklahoma, but the Cherokee refused to leave. They had no desire to live in Oklahoma. They wanted to live in the land of their ancestors, where they had always lived. The Cherokee took their case to the U.S. Supreme Court, and they won. The Supreme Court said the Cherokee were right, that the U.S. government could not force them to move. The Cherokee people were so happy. They thought they had won the battle to live on their own land. But they were mistaken. I ignored the Supreme Court ruling, and I directed the U.S. Army to capture all the Cherokee they could find and force them to move. And the U.S. Army followed my decision. The Supreme Court did nothing.
Is that known as the Trail of Tears?
Yes, the Trail of Tears was when the U.S. government, under my direction, forced Native Americans to move from their homelands in the southern United States to the Indian Territory in what's today Oklahoma. People from the Cherokee, Muskogee, Chickasaw, Choctaw, and Seminole tribes were marched at gunpoint across hundreds of miles to their reservation.
When did that take place?
The Indian Removal Act was passed by Congress in 1830. The actual removal of the Native American tribes from the South took several years. It began with the removal of the Choctaw in 1831 and ended with the removal of the Cherokee in 1838.
Did they want to move?
The people and the leaders of the tribes were often divided on this issue. Some thought that they had no choice but to agree to move. Others wanted to stay and fight for their land. Few of them actually wanted to leave their homeland, but they knew they could not fight the U.S. government and win.
Tell me more about what led up to the Trail of Tears.
After the Indian Removal Act was passed in 1830, the Cherokee people resisted moving to Oklahoma. Eventually, I convinced some Cherokee leaders to sign an agreement called the Treaty of New Echata. By signing the treaty, they agreed to trade their homeland for land in Oklahoma and $5 million. However, many of the Cherokee leaders did not agree to the treaty. They petitioned to Congress, begging them to let them stay on their land. Despite gaining some support in Congress, the Cherokee were told they must leave by May of 1838, or they would be forced to leave their land. When May arrived, only a few thousand Cherokee had left, so I sent General Winfield Scott to remove the Cherokee by force.
So, what actually happened during the march?
General Winfield Scott and his soldiers rounded up the Cherokee people into large prison camps called stockades. In many cases, the Cherokee were not allowed to gather up their possessions before being put into the camps. During the summer, some groups were forced to start marching to Oklahoma. However, many people died from the heat and diseases. The remainder of the people were held in camps until that fall. In the fall, the rest of the Cherokee headed out to Oklahoma. It took several months' travel for around 1,000 miles across mountains and wilderness terrain. The journey lasted into the winter months, making it very difficult and dangerous. Along the way, thousands of Cherokee died from diseases, starvation, and the cold. Historians now estimate at least 4,000 Cherokee died on the Trail of Tears.
That seems like a really dark period in U.S. history. Sure, you gained more territory for the United States, but you guys did so at the expense of thousands of human beings. Please excuse me, Mr. President. I need to time travel again. That way I can prevent the Dark Knight from persecuting thousands of other people in Brookings, South Dakota. Hey, where am I? Hey, excuse me, sir. Do you know where and when I am?
You're in Coloma, California, right after the gold rush, with the most unlucky guy west of the Mississippi.
Why do you say that? Don't you know you're living close to where the San Francisco 49ers will win many Super Bowls?
I don't know nothing about Super Bowls, but I know all too much about 49ers. You see, my name is James Marshall, and I'm one of the original gold miners. You could even call me a 48er, because my discovery of gold at Sutter's Mill in California in 1848 started the California Gold Rush. Here, pull up a chair, and I'll tell you all about my rotten luck. You see, I'm responsible for the California Gold Rush that took place between 1848 and 1855. During this time, gold was discovered in California. Over 300,000 people rushed to California to find gold and strike it rich. It all started when I was building a sawmill for John Sutter, when I found shiny flakes of gold in the river on January 24th, 1848. I told John Sutter about the discovery, but we tried to keep it secret. However, soon word got out and prospectors were rushing to California to find gold. As word quickly spread, some 80,000 miners flooded the area, extending up and down the length of the Sacramento Valley and overrunning Sutter's land. Ironically, neither Sutter nor I ever profited from the discovery that should have made us very, very wealthy. Though I tried to secure my own claims in the gold fields, I was unsuccessful. My sawmill also failed, as every able-bodied man took off in search of gold. Soon the area surrounding Sutter's mill became the first mining boomtown in California, Coloma.
Ah, so you're the guy responsible for bringing so many people to California, such as the 49ers.
Yes. Before the gold rush, there were only about 14,000 non-Native Americans living in California. This soon changed. Around 6,000 people arrived in 1848, and in 1849, around 90,000 people arrived to hunt for gold. These people were called 49ers. They came from all around the world. Some were Americans, but many came from places like China, Mexico, Europe, and Australia.
Do you know any other interesting facts that you could tell these future Knights of Social Studies about the gold rush?
I know a few. See, San Francisco was a small town of about 1,000 people when gold was first discovered. A few years later, it had over 30,000 residents. Also, California was admitted as the 31st state of the United States in 1850 during the gold rush. The U.S. was all too happy to add them with all the wealth they could bring into the country. And then also, historians estimate that about 12 million ounces of gold was mined during the gold rush. That would be worth around $20 billion using today's prices.
Thank you for your time, James Marshall. I hope your luck turns around for you. Well, there you have it, future Knights of Social Studies. Two major events in history that led to the development and expansion of our territory, both of which are tied to economics. One where $5 million was paid to some of the Native American leaders for moving from their homeland to their new reservations in Oklahoma, and then also about the gold rush and all the people that went out to California trying to get rich, strike it rich. Get it? Got it? Good. Until next time, adios.